Welcome back. New at 10, pickleball, the fastest growing sport in America, continues to expand its reach right here in the tri-states. Often described as a combination of tennis, ping pong, and badminton, pickleball has attracted a range of players from under 10 to those well into their golden years. One of those regulars who earned a medal at a recent national tournament in Naples, Florida, tells us why the sport is picking up popularity with the younger crowd.
I feel like a lot of the younger generation really has like a drive for competitiveness and, are really looking to get outdoors. I feel like a lot of tennis players are kind of picking up pickleball as well, just because it's something similar.
And Quincy Park officials estimate there are 500 picklers who play regularly. They say several hundred more play the sport semi-regularly or occasionally at 4 city parks.